Would you eat the ehrgeiz ramen? Thumb broth. Everyone, welcome to the Render Museum. In these hollowed halls, we offer everything from the wild woody exposium to ancient relics such as the Virtua Racing Pit Stop team, and of course, the Mona Lisa of renders, the Note House. Yes. Perhaps we may also interest you in a recent uncovering of E3 TGS and promo art CDs that one can see from the developer SQUARESOFT, where we have, for example, the modern-day masterpiece, Smoking Junon. But of course, ehrgeiz is the real main attraction here, because, I think that any game that has a logo saying God Bless the Ring and a title screen saying Godless the Dungeon has to be pretty darn great. Besides, it has RPG mode, with a cute little town even, and a very uncanny cat, and Sephiroth, so we ain't too far off neither. Though, man, I don't know what these pants are made of, but that had nothing to do with it. Because yeah, the game's whole cast has been rendered out in salaciously uncanny CG, as have various frames from its opening FMV now freed from crusts. It is the type of stuff handed out to people making manuals, strategy guides, reviews, merch, or someone's Angel Fire page. But that don't mean that they can't be appreciated on their own merits too. I mean, his pants may be weird, but I do think that this is a very cool image. The red lighting from up below, the moon up top, all the while the boy in midair ready to drop. Then we got Lee busting out a room and blasting apart some cops. It's one of those things I never quite understood from the opening video, like blow up said cops by all means. Fuck 'em. But being able to see a selection of higher res frames made me realize that, dang, he's coming out of a hospital. There's a story here, which essentially led me to feel that these renders can tell whole narratives of their own, lore, if you will. The stuff that's in the background, the off-screen or the momentary, made the primary focus of pondering when set still in image. Sure, you see Noba eat the ramen in the FMV for like 2 whole seconds, but seeing it here in high def presented as is leaves one to wonder about the ehrgeiz ramen. Like, those low poly bottles is actually just legally distinct, aka sorta hidden away enough versions of S&B spices. Lore. Same with the few bits of Front Mission 3 stuff that I have. A nice view of the worker mech from the opening, detailed shots of Okinawa Marine City, and the robo containers with writing nice and clear. It is now more than just a fleeting shot or a camera angle. It is a work presented on its own. A painting, a photograph, a render. Where the car's going? What could it be like to live here? Does the thumb add flavor? And Jesus Christ, why is the detail on this Parasite Eve monster so goddamn vile without the image compression? Like, that saliva is way too detailed. No. If anything, how everything embodies the lore idea that I had, it's the vehicles. All the way back from the pixel days with the whale ship and the airships with their crazy functions to Final Fantasy XV's money car, it is pretty heckin' clear that the big SQ has some vehicle heads on in there. In between all of the various types of artists and modelers, it's hard to find out who did what on any of these games, but man, Final Fantasy VII and VIII had some goddamn love and lore put into this shit. I can certainly say that. Hardy Daytona. Hardy Daytona here, so I'm gonna say that they probably meant Harley Daytona, which sounds badass and sure shit looks the part. Look at all this too. Magic trick! Yeah, that's right. I got the homie Oni Doni, journalist and localizer for Moni, to Englishify the JP text so that I would have more to say than, whoa, this looks cool. Joke's on you though, bitch, it fucking does. But now we also have the deets. Those marvelous locos, for instance, are pretty central to the Midgar segment, kicking off our tale, saving Cloud's ass, providing nifty exposition funnels, spooky graveyards, high-octane jumps, and copy-paste corridors to sneak in on in-them reactors too. They're important, but you sure as shit don't get to know much about them. Like how they're the only official transportation between top and bottom plates, making those ID checkups all the more oppressive. Or how they're all dated and decommissioned models too, because the people below just don't get any better. Not all of it's quite that theme implying, however. The stuff on the cars is just car shit, talking about the engines and model types and aerodynamics and shit. But even that can go places, as it claims that the Hardy uses a VE4 GE engine, which is a reference to the 4A GE Toyota engine, which is a tuner engine used in the Trueno from Racing Lagoon. And shit like that makes me nerd the fuck out, man. What's also fun to note is that the Hardy Daytona is such a beastly machine that it was nowhere near ready for mass production, hence why Cloud was able to escape on it so effortlessly, giving all those Shinra fuckers a run for their money. These helicopters are also especially made for the Turks too, equipped with fog lights so they can keep check on Midgar's darkened underground level, which is oppressive as all hell, and of course there's also the transport version for all your Eris slapping needs. You know, I've thought about the Aerith versus Eris thing before, right? And there's this old print hat that lists Bullet, Alis, and Cloud. Now, Cloud and Alis are dumb, but if Barret actually could have been Bullet, then maybe Aerith was supposed to be Earth? Earth and Cloud themes? Who knows? But it makes you think. Final Fantasy VIII also had a plethora of amazing cars, trains, and planes. From the bulbous and sleek Estar whips and the bulky yet cute timber trucks to the sleek as shit and alien as fuck looking ass garden cars and boats, and the immaculately stylish engraved Nomura trains. They really go for that vibe, that Sophista future. We'd later see return in full force in FF15 with the regalia looking like the perfect embodiment of luxury. Also, goddamn, Final Fantasy X's airship is such a colorful and unique design. Not to mention Ten-2's motor plane with the early 2000s square tribal tat stylings of Bouncer fame, as well as a hearty dose of Hardy energy, making a striking comeback too. Very similar to Saz's bike as well, just with a more frilly Chinese temple look to it. Dope as heck. Regrettably, none of these have any info on them, but sometimes that's okay, as these designs can speak for themselves aplenty. Like, I don't need notes to tell me that the Ifrit airship from 12 ain't nothing to fuck with. I can gauge that the hardy-ass skates the Chocobo dons in racing are probably pretty heckin' quick, and you'd have to be goddamn stupid to not understand the inner workings of Balam Garden. Like, the big, spitting, hovering, dangly circle that provides light at night and spins so that the bells and it can fly, No shortage of info on Shinra's inner workings, though. Kinda wished this image of Genova's robo-torso fat pipe tank thingy had more to say on what the fuck it even was, but it just sort of explains that it's top secret. But we do have very detailed imagery of Shinra's power structure and crisp as hell renders of the office floors. This materia room, where even is that? I don't think I've ever been there. Also vaguely remembered being able to examine the vehicles in the lobby, though I think that might actually be me conflating Crisis Core with OG. You do get the funny runs though, so that's neat. Also got some nice clean renders of Wall Market, Sector 5, but with playground doors open, those dope mountain statues at Wutai, Cool Cave, Coral Reactor, and Cozy Calm. Not a lot to say here, but it's just nice to be able to take these in like this, in a way that you can't quite do in-game. Behold them as paintings. As capitalism sucks, this museum survives off of donations, and so we thank the kind, generous, the willing, and the able for keeping this shithole afloat. I mean, that ehrgeiz ramen ain't gonna pay for itself. And you don't even want to know how expensive it was to drag the fucking Hardy into the building. That bitch is heavy. Plus, Wild Woody keeps escaping. Wild Woody. See, running this museum ain't easy. But hey, at least we got some high-profile guests. Oh, what could be in here? The Bouncer was Square's showcase for what graphics they'd be pushing on the PS2, essentially a promo tool in and of itself, thus boasting many renders. I only have a small handful of them digitally though, as sadly Part 1, the discs that could have contained more had bad ISOs due to disc rot and whatnot, but luckily I have this big old book called The Bouncer Maximum, which contains anything and everything you could want to know about the Bouncer. Sadly, part 2, I seem to be the only motherfucker in the world who owns this, and I don't know how to scan books or read Japanese, and I ain't gonna subject Dino to translate the entire fucking thing, but hey, we can peruse. As it has style for days, gives a really good impression of the vibe of these dudes and their dog street setting. Pool table, dartboard, whole ass design documents on the bar, the satellite GF and the various vehicles, like the trains, the cool little fly ships with more text and stats than even the Final Fantasy VII renders had. Hella concept art for this cool calm-esque city as well that you barely get to see in game, details on all the mechs and gear that the enemies use, Nidgar, and of course all of the amazing Nomura streetwear detailed to shit. Fashion report! Sion's drip, Kakatar jacket. A good look at Ko's epic tribal tattoos. Dominique's incredible jacket and her dumb little hat thing with the floppy ears and even fucking beta shits. Look at these Sions. Fuck yes. And hella deets on the titular dog of street. Bless him. Also, their sheet music, and I don't think I need to tell you how fucking incredible this is. You really get to see the passion that went on in this, dripping off of these pages. The drawing straight from Nomura's pen, the storyboarding straight out of the writer's room, the intricate planning and number crunching that had to be done for the game's balance and movesets, and the concept art that would later come to life in-game. It's just cool to see how much thought went into this, the world and its characters. For this 2-hour game, this linear as heck beat 'em up, which is mostly cutscenes displaying a story that is rather tunnel visioned. I mean, there's the plain lady who was barely even in the game, but bang, here she is, with text upon text upon text. Now, granted, a lot of the lore is in the loading screens, but A, those go by too fast most of the time, and B, being that you pick characters for each battle and that the loads are specific to whom you picked, it would take quite a fair amount of playthroughs to get all of that information, which was likely intentional, as it seems very intent on making you replay it in many of its design facets too, as evidenced by this book teaching me that you can actually unlock and play as every character in the game, which is fucking wild. But it's just nice to have it here, to be able to ponder it in peace. If you can read Japanese at least. That said though, this game's a very fitting final hoorah for SQUARESOFT renders, as they did go under not too long after this, and also the PS2 games just had less of them. 10 has a few iconic ones, and KH1 has that one where Sora looks up that you see a lot, but the PS2 began to mark the point where the in-game graphics look more or less on par with the CG of the gen prior, and could therefore be marketed for its own sake. Games like 12 and Dirge or KH2 mainly relied on some character renders, hella in-game screens, and dope-ass illustrations rather than a smothering of CG. Same with some of the PS1 games even. Parasite Steve, Bushido Blade, or the Sagas. Do got some nice Bushido Blade weapon renders though, and of course PE1 also had many legendary ones. Although all of this does raise a point, this Aya looks nothing like this Aya, as this Aya is more so based off of the in-game model rather than Nomura's art. And it's hard to take art and make a 2D a 3D. It's why 3D games based off of cartoons often look a little uncanny. Plus, the 3D artists are almost never the same people as the 2D ones. Sometimes you get a Final Fantasy VIII situation where shit's one-to-one. Other times you get Parasite Eve 2 renders that used in-game models, and rarely times you get things like the renders of Chocobo Racing's tracks where they made renders from scratch but one-to-one based off of the in-game assets. Or Final Fantasy VII, which has a mixture of all of the above. Comparing these to what Nomura drew in his 90s anime-influenced days is very interesting, especially when contrasted to how these same characters were redone for ehrgeiz. The high-quality CG renders are very much like his drawings, as are the battle models, but the low-grade CGs are based off of the map models, which are in a realm all their own with the fucking hoof hands and shit. But then for ehrgeiz, you get more FF8 era Nomura FF7 drawings that don't mesh at all with the game's own art style that has much more exaggerated proportions and more Tekken-like CG, but then the Final Fantasy folks don't have CG, except for this one render of Sephiroth, which might just be from Final Fantasy VII. I'm not sure. Either way, it's neat to be able to see how different artists and different in-game art styles impact the renders. Tic Tacs had the no-nose evilies, and so you get schmoove as fuck bean-headed no-nose CG people. Tobal had Toriyama character designs, resulting in some weirdly uncel-shaded Budokai 1 looking ass renders. But then you got the OG Final Fantasies ported to PS1, where Amano was still the lead artist over Nomura, which makes for these sleek new romantics looking androgynous sophistifuture pretty people. That's really dope. Put a render of Chocobo, Joe, and Terra next to each other and you'd have no reason to assume that these are all from the same series, essentially. It really highlights just how much Square was doing at the time. Anything from fighting games and space shooters to kart racers and epic RPGs. All represented, shown off, revealed, and marketed with CG renders to call their very own. And yeah, I said it makes it a pretty goddamn good marketing tool.
Oh, man. Oh, I feel fucked up, man. Oh, I feel like I need some Coca-Cola to freshen me up, man. Oh, yosh, I am rejuvenated once more.
Yeah, so for reasons not publicly known, though and easy to assume one is money, Square and Coca-Cola teamed up during the Y2K years. As the press notes say, the world of Final Fantasy IX spreads out in Coca-Cola TVCM. There were figures that came with bottles with characters from Final Fantasy 7 through 10. Not quite sure about what they did with his face here. From Mission 3 had Coca-Cola trucks in it, Parasite Eve 2 had Coca-Cola as health items, there was this custom Coke bottle with cool Nomura art, and Final Fantasy IX, as alluded to, had a whole ass ad with a set of high quality renders of its very own. I have these somehow, including the credits and promotional text, which list the cast as Zeton, Vivi, Steiner, others. Very cool. It also describes what the fuck you're actually seeing, like these knights aren't just being consumed by the coke. No. It is soldiers' suits of armor being transformed by the magic of the crown of Coca-Cola, and people on the streets transforming into street performers, as Vivi suffers a small-scale mental breakdown. The crown popping out of the Coca-Cola bottle implies enjoy. And Zidane, one of the Final Fantasy heroes, runs after the enjoy. Ah, I see. It's nice to see Alexandria poppin' like this though, in a decently high-res, no less. I know 9 has both a AI upskilled mod and actually quite a large amount of OG renders floating around, but it's still really nice to see these shits free of compression artifacting. I love this game's little world. Tying it back into what I mentioned earlier though, Final Fantasy IX has such a unique presentation that's expressed beautifully in its CG. From the low-key, almost painterly textured character key arts that remind me somewhat of the texture work FF12 would later use, to stunning and iconic pieces of easily frameable artwork, like Alexander versus Bahamut, the airship overview of Alexandria, and Vivi being dunked upon. Anyway, a few cutscenes in games like these always remind me that somewhere within Square there are, or had to have been, full-scale models of the environments used for pre-rendered backgrounds, and it makes me a little sad that we'll likely never get to see those. Sure, that's a positive note to end it on. Of course, these shits were very much a sign of their times, and Square wasn't the only one banging out dope shit. Sega, for instance, for Nights rendered out a whole entire city that's barely even in the game, if at all. And the goddamn Tekken renders. I've used these hellally in the past, and I will keep using these hellally in the future, because either they're funny as fuck or cool as heck. Oh, and also,
have you seen the Stranger of Paradise renders that the Twitter account has been sharing? This is going to be the greatest game ever made! Return of the renders, return of the dirge, return of the Final Fantasy VIII era Nomura humans. I am ascending!